Hello friends, welcome to the video number 7 for the Python 3 tutorial series. And in this video we're going to be talking about variables. I'm going to cover as much as I can. There is only one um, concept that I'm going to leave for a later tutorial. That concept is the variable scope, but first I want to cover some other things before we can see that concept and understand a little bit better what is the scope of a variable. So I'm gonna try to cover everything else in this video. Uh, well, first of all, what is a variable? Basically, we can think of a variable in two different ways. Now, again, for non-professional programmers like me, I don't think it really matters, but I think it's good that you know that well there are two different concepts. But in the end, well, for at least for me, again, I'm not a professional programmer. It doesn't really matter. It's basically the same thing. Um, so the first way we can think of a variable is like being a container, right? Imagine like a bucket where you can store values or data, and you are gonna put a name on that bucket, a label, if you will, so that you can refer to that container and to the value that is stored inside of that container. Now, another way of thinking of a variable, you can imagine that all these values or data are stored in some locations in the memory of our computer. It can be the RAM, or it can be the hard drive, or whatever. And then I'm gonna create this label, and this label is gonna have a pointer, um, a pointing arrow, if you want to, or like a hand, right? Like that is pointing to a specific location in the memory that is containing that value that I want to refer to. Um, Now, again, you can think in these two ways of a variable. It doesn't, for me, it doesn't really matter. I am more used to think about it as a container again. But well, make your choice. Now, that label, of course, we gotta give it a name. We gotta name that container, and there are certain rules to name our variables. In Python, basically, you just are gonna use letters, numbers, and underscores. That's it. Stay away from any weird symbol on your keyboard, and you should be fine. Now, you can use the underscore to separate names when you are gonna be using more than two words, right? For example, and let's make the first one. I can make my variable. This is gonna be equals to hello, and well, if I print this, I get hello. Now I can use what is known as a camel case variable equals 7, right? And it's known as a as a camel case because let's look like this, right? Every consecutive word, the first letter, you make it a capital letter. So it basically, well, looks like the humps of a camel. It doesn't really matter which one you use, but once you have selected one, stick to it, right? If you decide to use underscores, try to always use underscores. If you are gonna use camel casing, then always use camel casing. Otherwise, you are just gonna get confused later on, and I don't remember if I did this or I did this, or even this is basically, I think this is called as the lowercase camel or lower camel casing, or this would be the upper camel casing. If I try to print this variable, it says the variable is not defined. So another important thing, capitalization in Python is important, right? So this my variable and this my variable are two different labels, two different variables, right? They can store different things, and actually they are different containers. So that's why Python is telling me, okay, my variable is not defined. Um, Now let's make some other mistakes. If I do my variable with a space there, I'm gonna get an error. If I use my variable with a hyphen, I get an error. Um, if I try to start with a number, I'm gonna get an error. Of course, I cannot use reserved words. I can do something like print my variable, blah blah blah. That will be fine. But print, of course, I cannot do it. Uh, Import, that's a reserved word in Python, right? So it turns orange. I cannot use this. So just again, stay away of those things. And well, we already mentioned, do not use any kind of weird symbol. Um, Something like that, right? It's just not gonna work. Um, Now, something very important, my variable, we have used this equal sign. Whoops. But well, it's very important for you to start thinking of it as this is not a mathematical expression, right? We are not evaluating a mathematical expression like we are used to see this equal sign, 2 plus 2 equals 4. Well, in programming, this equal sign is used or is known as the assignment operator, right? It is an operator and is used to assign the value on the right, or it can be an expression. It first evaluates the expression and then assign that value to the variable that is uh, being called, let's say, on the left side of the operator. So that allows me to do something like my variable. Actually, let's do something. E- X equals 7, and then I'm gonna do x equals x plus 7. So in mathematics or algebra, I don't know, something like this wouldn't make sense probably, or it would make a lot of people pulling their hairs off. Um, so again, we are not trying to make equal two different expressions. Is again, we are assigning the value of this expression to the variable that is on the left side. So in this case, x equals 7. So 7 plus 7 is going to be 14. Then take all that and assign it to x. Again, it just I am just reusing the variable, right, to store this new value. So now x equals 14. This brings us to some other very important concept. Now, variables get that name, or they are called variables because you can change their value, right? Whatever is in stored, or whatever they are pointing to in the memory, you can change that. Uh, so again, that's why the name variable. But there is some other very important thing you can see here in Python that in other programming language you cannot do. We are not just changing. Now let's say x equals hello, and then x is gonna be hello. Uh, we cannot just change the value, but also the data type that is stored in that variable. In many programming languages, you cannot do that. Once you declare a variable and you say, okay, this variable is gonna be used to store strings. You can only store strings, or this is gonna be used to store integers. You can only use integers. You cannot even mix different types of numbers. If you say this is a string, you cannot put a floating point number in there. You may get into troubles. Now, in Python, as you saw, we can do that. Now, that can be, of course, a double-edged sword. So if we are not careful, we can get in a lot of troubles. So use this carefully and to your advantage, and you should be fine. Um, okay, just let me take a quick look. What else? What else we need to talk about? Um, okay, no, I think that's it so far. There are just two more things that I want to talk to you about. And one is that you can assign more than one variable at a time. We can say something like A, comma, B, comma, C. So just use commas to separate the names of the variables, and then use your assignment operator, and then the values again separated by commas. So 3, comma, 5, comma, 7. So what is A is 3, what is B is 5, and what is C is 7. Pretty cool, right? Now, another thing we can do, and well, for those that have tried to do that Fibonacci series in a programming language. There are cases where you want to just switch the values stored in a couple of variables. So right now we have seen that A is 3 and B is 5. So let's just swap the variables, the values stored in those variables. We just need to say A comma B is going to be equals to B comma A. Whoop. B comma A. Right? So that's going to make A take the value of B and B take the value of A. So now A is going to be 5 and B is going to be 3. Pretty nice, right? Okay, so I think that's basically it for the variables right now. Again, we are gonna leave pending the what is the scope of a variable, but first we need to talk about some other things. And well, we have covered what is a variable, how can we name this, uh, what we cannot name them, why they are called variables. We saw that we can change not only the data, but also the data type. Um, and well, we see that we can assign more than one variable at a time and how we can swap the values stored in variables. So pretty extensive, but well, as always, I hope that you have found this video useful. And well, please don't forget to subscribe to the channel, and I hope to see you on the next video.